Hi guys, welcome back. This is episode number 2. In the last episode we talked about controlling your tummy position and rib cage position, which is a really important task. Today we're going to talk about accessing and using the muscles in your bottom, your glute muscles, which are incredibly important to help control your pelvis and your lower back position, especially when you're on your feet and especially when you're doing some tasks like running that requires continued access to that region. These drills, again, will start on the floor because they're quite fundamental and will allow you to get an idea of how to turn on those muscles first. Of course, this is not a strength program, this is an access program. This is teaching you to be able to switch these muscles on first. And this is what we're going to have a try now on the floor. So you'll need a floor space again, like last time, and we're going to start off on the floor like we did in the previous video. We're going to start off in exactly the same setup position. And we're going to have our hands by our sides. Now, quite simply with this, before you start this exercise, you're going to think about engaging that tummy in the same way you did in episode number 1. And that's really important. After I've done that and I've got my tummy engaged, I'm then going to lift my bottom off the floor until a point comes where I feel as though I can't go any further. I'm not going to try to go as high as possible because that defeats the object of this exercise, and we see people coming into this very horrible extended position which reinforces the very problem that episode number 1 was trying to correct, which is the tendency to want to push your rib cage forward or extend your back, create a big gap under your back. We're going to squash the tummy into the ground nice and tight. Then you're going to push through your heels of your feet. You'll notice that my foot remains flat, but my toes throughout the movement can be wiggled because they're not loaded. My heels are bearing most of the weight and my bum is being gripped nice and tight. I'm going to push to a point where I feel I can't go any higher, and I'm going to lower back down with control. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to try and maintain a level of activity in my tummy. I'm not just going to completely go floppy and then lift up again. I'm going to try and maintain that activity and go into a second rep. A very simple format for this would be you could start off by doing a single repetition, then maybe try 2 repetitions, and then 3, and then 4, and so forth. Every time you string a repetition together, you try to maintain activity throughout the movement without losing connection as you're doing that. We're trying to keep the feeling of effort in your bottom and not in your hamstrings. What we can often see with this exercise is people start with their feet too far away from their bottom, and in which case their hamstrings become the driving force for this movement. So we're going to start with our heels quite close to our bottom so that it ensures that the hamstrings are less likely to take over and our bum can do the work here. Of course, having the tummy switched on also stops the back from being overactive in this exercise and allows us to get a great effect from the bottom. So version number 1 of this is going to be both legs together and back down, trying to maintain some tummy activity, and you're going to go through practicing this movement. A simple progression for this would be to go from 2 legs to a single leg, and you could literally start with one leg slightly lifted off the ground, keeping your tummy active first, lifting up to the top and back down to the bottom. We're not going to be too pedantic on the position of the lifted leg, but you can just make sure there's a bit of air under the foot before you begin. You're then going to think about the same principles. My tummy is engaged, my bum is active the whole time, and I'm going to try to minimize any wobbling movement as I'm going through this. You'll probably find there's a tendency for you to sway left and right and rock as you start to move through range. And this is a requirement for you to correct that as part of the exercise. You're trying to make it nice and smooth without any unwanted movement except up and down available. That would be version number 1 and kind of a progression to version number 2. A third progression for this is you can start with both feet, you can lift up to the top position, and then you can try and take one leg off the ground and back down and then lower. Lift up, lift off, back to the center, and then down. This is actually a progression of the last exercise because changing the way in which you control your pelvis once you started to move, it's much more difficult than actually starting on one leg from the beginning. You're going to work your way through each of those very simple progressions. Again, you can spend as much time on these as you feel is necessary. If you find that you're very wobbly or you're having a very hard time getting any movement, it's probably one you're going to start to focus on over the next few months.